Arena League.
It's funny you bring that up. Did you watch the Arena Bowl on Friday?
Yes, and we were. I mean, so that was the AFL, the Arena Football League? Okay.
Which I thought it was gone to. The way I understood it, the league folded in 2019. The original Arena League from, back in the 80s. And, I mean, God, I had the video game back in, like, the 2000s, the Georgia Force, the New Orleans Voodoo, Austin Wranglers. There are a bunch of teams in there. That league apparently reformed last year. Then, like, half the teams folded. But they came back with, like, 8 teams this year and apparently had their Super Bowl, quote-unquote, on Friday in the middle of the American Dream shopping mall in New Jersey, which I love sports played in unique venues. That one might take the cake, to be honest with you.
It was absolutely hilarious. So I get to my buddies. I said, what are y'all watching? There's nothing on. I said, okay, cool. It's football.
Sure.
Check out this, 66 by 28-yard field or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So we're playing a basketball court, essentially.
So we're watching it, and then all of a sudden we're like, wait a minute, this looks kind of weird. And I think they're playing it on what is normally like a skating rink.
Yes.
You can kind of tell the shape.
Yes.
And somebody's like, is that at a mall? Right. Yes, they're like, is that Mall of America? I don't know. And then so we started making all these jokes. Like, we didn't realize that was basically the championship
right.
game. We didn't realize that. Thought it was like a regular season game. And we're like, well, do they play the Super Bowl in like Mall of America? Like, you upgrade to the better mall. That one's just a regular like run of the mill Simon. Winner gets Annie Ann's gift cards.
See,
whatever.
That's what I brought up to Dave. I was like, because there's no way you sell tickets to this thing, right? Like, you're just hoping the people in the mall are gonna like stop and watch. Like,
yeah, they're like, I'm at Sephora,
exactly.
and
like,
now I'm looking
on the way to Cinnabon. We'll watch like a quarter of the Arena Bowl.
It was hilarious. Now, the guy who was doing the play-by-play, or not the play-by-play, first the play-by-play. I mean, they were trying hard.
Sure.
I mean,
you have to treat it seriously.
They had a sideline reporter, and this guy.
She like at Aeropostale or something?
No. Well, it was a dude.
Okay.
And he was, snazzy dressed. It was almost like it was his first assignment. And
he went down. He went to the men's warehouse.
Yes.
On the 3rd floor, got his suit, and went out there and did the sideline reporting.
This was a shout out Brent Skinner. This was a BP Skinner suit.
Okay.
He was dressed to the nines. I feel like they were like, he was very like, it was a younger guy. They're like, hey man, this is your first assignment,
sure.
Big game. And he's like, oh man, let me go get this.
Dress for the job you want.
Get this new suit. And then it's like, what arena am I going to? They're like, you're going to the skating rink at the whatever mall.
You said this is a football game, right? Yes. The biggest football game in arena football. The Arena Bowl 33, to be exact. Yes, you are going to the American Dream shopping mall in New Jersey.
Yes. And, they even had the zoomed-out shots of New York City.
Yeah.
It was, they did it up.
Sure.
It was.
Oh, it's like right down the street from the Meadowlands. It's like, right there in the heart of a lot of football interest. And again, you know what? If you are the Arena League, I always talk about like the spring football leagues, what the USFL, the XFL, now the UFL, trying to catch that casual interest of people. That's how you do it right there. Bring it to the people. Put it in front of their faces while they're eating their Auntie Anne's pretzel, when they're on the way to JCPenney on the other side of the mall. Like, hey, there's a football game going on. Let's stop and watch.
It was, and by the way, for those, I know everybody's wondering, well, who won? The Billings Outlaws.
That's a long fight.
I don't know if Kevin Costner is not the owner of the team, I don't think.
Here's the funny thing about that. The Billings Outlaws would have had to have, I'm assuming they didn't get a chartered flight. They're probably flying Delta from Billings, Montana.
No, they're busing from Billings, Montana. That's a long bus ride.
On a, 14-hour bus ride, probably longer than that. Greyhound bus from Montana to New Jersey.
Yeah, but the Billings Outlaws beat the Albany Firebirds. It was a barn burner. It was 46 to 41.
It was like a home game for Albany. It's right in their backyard.
It's not fair, really. Did you know who the commissioner is by the AFL? And then we'll move on to other things.
I do not.
He's talked during the game. They had him on in the booth.
Okay.
It's Jeff Fisher. Former Tennessee Titans head coach. Isn't that fitting?
All right, now I'm invested in the AFL now.
Well, the season's over. You'll have to wait till next year.
You have convinced me next year to pay attention to the AFL purely because Jeff Fisher is running it, which I don't know how many games they play in the season, but that means every team's got to be right around 500, right?
Everybody's like, please do not have a segment, not even one next year, dedicated to the AFL. But maybe we'll have one. You know, next year we will give one update on how the AFL season.
I am more intrigued than I was with the UFL. I'll say that much, purely because of Jeff Fisher. But yes,
that's the only reason.
Yes, congratulations to the Billings. Was it Mustangs?
I already forgot. I literally just had it up. The Billings Outlaws.
Billings Mustangs. That's a minor league team. That was close. Anyway, congratulations to the Billings Outlaws, Arena Bowl 33 champions. I can't wait to see what mall they go to next year.
They do need to play it like Mall of America, like really do this up.
Well, Dave and I were speculating, like, you know, what kind of sport could you play in Columbiana Mall? I said like X Games skating, because you have obstacles and stuff, because you don't have like a wide open space to do like hockey or football or something.
All you need is like, I don't know, you could probably, all you need is like 66 yards. Like if you put some, they don't have like that place had like the balcony kind of set up where you're, 3 floors you're overlooking and you can walk around. Like you said, you can go.
Did Columbia ever have an arena team?
I don't think so.
Don't think so?
They had a minor league hockey team.
Okay.
The Inferno, which I went to a game.
Maybe it was Charlotte that had an arena team.
Yeah, to my knowledge, now somebody, hit us on the Firehouse Subs text line, let us know if you remember. Yes, I went. I have a jersey, whatever it is, if they sell jerseys, but not to my knowledge.
I'll have to do some research. But
that was fascinating.
That was a long way to say that I guess football has been back. We just weren't aware of it until it was taking place in a mall.
Hall of Fame game.
Now that arena football has ended, the standard of professional football returns next week in some capacity. Then we get, preseason games starting for real the next week after that. And then the benefit of the calendar being the way that it is that next month is the start of college football, week 0 on August 24th. Then, of course, we hit the ground running on August 31st with South Carolina and Old Dominion. So not that much farther to wait, only 40 days until kickoff there. And then it'll be off and running for whatever the season's going to be.
By the way, this will be the last Arena League update of the day, or perhaps ever. Will King, shout out, Will. I hope you don't mind me using your name, by the way, but I am. He writes in on my personal Firehouse Subs text line and let me know that he knew a couple guys that played in Columbia, did have an Arena League team or an arena team. Then I have Googled this.
All right.
The Columbia Stingers, they didn't play in the AFL. They played in the National Indoor Football League. And they played at Colonial Life Arena, and Corey Miller was the coach.
So for a while there was like 8 different arena leagues. Like you had the AFL, that was the standard, but there was like IFL and indoor arenas and all. There was all kind of different ones. So I was asking the question from the Arena League standpoint, but yes, they did have some form of an arena team at some point in time, which sounds about right.
They did. Now, back to week 0. So since Wes sitting here and he's still on the beach somewhere,
right?
We can, if we wanted, we can talk about week 0 a little bit.
No, he's not a believer.
In fact, if you literally, the NCAA has a piece on their website that literally is titled, "When does the 2024 college football season start?"
College Football 25 recognizes week 0, so I think we should recognize week 0.
I wonder what Wes, when he's playing his console on the beach this week, he's like going to play his
throws
first,
it.
Yes, he does. He doesn't agree. But yes, it starts on August 24th.
August 24th.
Week
so
0.
We're 33 days away from that being the, in my opinion, official start.
And there's one moderately interesting game, but I will watch.
Like for week 0, that's all. You just need one. You know what I mean? Like there's filler games in there. Hawaii's playing a game. You got some other games that are just on. Like you'll put it on. Like you're not dedicating your whole Saturday to watching it. It's your appetizer, right? You get the Florida State, Georgia Tech game over there in Ireland. You'll probably pay attention to that one because that one has the potential to be pretty interesting, maybe competitive. And then you'll have the other games on in the background while you're doing whatever you're doing on August 21st, filling out your last Saturday before you dedicate your life to college football for the next 5 months.
Yeah, and that game is interesting because it is, maybe the quote-unquote, marquee game. It's not a huge game, but it is in Ireland. It's at noon. So when you wake up on your Saturday, you can check it out. And Florida State, a team that went undefeated and got left out last year. So there's kind of a little bit of intrigue based on that. And they have a new quarterback who used to play for Clemson, DJ Uiagalelei. Just interesting because you look at it and go, can they be, how good can they potentially be? Now, I don't know if this game will tell us everything about that, but it will tell us something. So, I don't know, Montana State at New Mexico on FS1.
I'll watch it.
I'll have it on.
Sure.
It's at 2:30. That'll be on, but I will not be as dialed in as the coming weeks. But it is, the point is, it is getting here very soon.
No, absolutely. And, with that, we are making our way through Media Days. Of course, SEC Media Day happened last week. We got ACC and Big Ten Media Days starting up this week. On Friday, after we got off the air, or really as we were wrapping up the show, we got the official release of the SEC Media Poll. And lo and behold, South Carolina not too high on that list. We'll go through it coming up. Real quick, though, I want to remind you, the best moments in Gamecock history since 2000 will be starting next Monday, July the 29th. We're going to put up some Twitter polls on the 107.5 The Game Twitter page running through next Thursday, giving you the chance to vote on 4 choices for your favorite Gamecock moment each and every day. Then we'll take the 4 winners from the week, from week 1, and start a new poll the following Monday on August 5th to see who the winner is going to be. And we'll talk about the winner on the final poll on August 12th. It's all sponsored by our friends over at Columbia Craft at 520 Green Street down in the Vista. So again, starting next Monday, be on the lookout for the Twitter poll for your favorite Gamecock moments since 2000. Diving into the SEC Media Poll coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Monday on the game.
Did you know that we're going to across from Lexington Medical Firehouse? I didn't know the location either, but that's what Josh said. Yep. So not your home base.
Yeah, I know where that was. The other one. Yeah. I've accidentally ordered sub there before and went to the wrong one. I went to the one close to me and I was like, crap, it's the other Lexington one.
That's tough. Cannot wait because Tyler and I here during the break, we're talking about the next Firehouse Subs live show that we're going to have. That's actually coming up this Thursday from 9 to noon. Store open at about 10:30 out there. 2805B Sunset Boulevard. That's right across from Lexington Medical Center. Come see us at Firehouse Subs. We'll have some giveaways. We'll be talking some Gamecock sports. But, most importantly, is not the fact that we're there. It's that it's Firehouse Subs, and so that means they will have delicious Firehouse Subs there. All of your favorites, and if you can't wait till Thursday and you're hungry right now, go check out the Rapid Rescue to Go on firehousesubs.com or use my favorite method. Download the Firehouse Subs app. Get yourself some free rewards towards future purchases. Avoid the wait and order online using the Rapid Rescue to Go. That's Firehouse Subs or the Firehouse Subs app. 14 locations all around the Midlands. I'm going to see if Dave will play. Don't we have a gold line?
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Ed and Chris Clark along with you on this Monday. We'll get Wes Mitchell back in here on Wednesday if he ever returns from the beach or manages to put down his PlayStation system, one or the other. There we go.
He might just stay.
He might. Or, if he did bring the PlayStation to the beach, his wife might leave him there.
I don't think so. She wants to keep Wes around.
As far as we know.
He's a good one.
As far as we know. We'll see. So on Friday, again, just as we're getting off the air, we got the official release of the SEC media poll. Again, all those folks that are out there in Dallas for media days, including our crew of Jay, Terry, and Elijah, all got to cast their votes for how they think the new SEC is going to finish. And, of course, this year with no divisions, it is truly a 1 through 16. No more split between East and West. It is a 1 through 16 of where everyone thinks teams will finish. I do want to say Carolina did get one first-place vote. So somebody believes that Carolina is the best team in the SEC. But overall, as kind of expected, they end up 13th out of 16th, just ahead of Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Vanderbilt. But going back to what Beamer's message was last week and the one that was conveyed by the three player representatives as well, it's like, yeah, we kind of know people aren't going to be thinking too highly of us, and the media poll reflects that.
Yeah, it does. Not a big surprise there. It'll be interesting, by the way. Tyler, remind me, when they come out, I know we have the polls come out immediately every single year. There's some ridiculous, somebody who votes Vandy to win the SEC or something like that. I don't think that happened this year.
It actually happened twice.
Twice. Okay.
Two people voted for Vanderbilt.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So two people. I think normally some people just do a mea culpa of like, hey, here's how I voted. But I don't think they actually release like, hey, here, John Smith is the one who voted for.
If you want to put it out there yourself, you can. But it's not, not that it's like this big government secret that I can't believe this guy voted for them. Like, if you want to release it, you can. But I don't think it's necessarily public record. It may be submitted anonymously. I've never been to media days. I don't know. I guess we could ask Terry or Jay or Elijah or something like that. But, you can, if you want to be ridiculous with it and say, I think Vanderbilt and Mississippi State are going to play in Atlanta in December. You can do that if you want. There's nothing wrong with it. But I feel like most people do take it seriously, and no surprise, Georgia's got the most votes to win the championship. Texas, Alabama, all those teams towards the top. But when it shakes out again, Carolina kind of where about we thought they were going to be in that 13th range.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, and I think we said this last week. You are coming off a 5-7 season, and I think, Tyler, this is an interesting year in the league because obviously somebody's gonna. There's going to be an order to all this. Somebody's going to finish first. Somebody's going to finish 16th.
Sure.
And I think for the most part, the teams that are in the top 5, like, what do we think? Are there 5 teams that could legitimately win the SEC this year? Probably.
I feel confident saying 4.
Your 4 would be Georgia,
Texas,
Bama, Texas,
Alabama, and Ole Miss. Like, I feel confident saying I could see one of those 4 teams winning. When you get down, I'm just going in order here based on how this ended up. Like, when you get into the LSUs and Missouris, a little more dark horse. I think both those teams are going to be good. I don't know if they're going to be good enough to win the league. And, Nico could go out there and have a Cam Newton season for Tennessee for all we know, and they're the best team in the country. But it's kind of like I'll believe it when I see it type of thing. But I feel pretty confident, and those are also kind of the 4 teams that I expect to be in the playoff from the SC as well. Those 4 teams being my yes, I definitely think one of these 4 teams could win.
I think we, could put Missouri in the number 5. Like, I might feel good enough of sliding them in there because they went 11-2 last year. They go to a bowl game. They beat Ohio State. That was replayed over the weekend.
They have a very easy schedule, by the way.
Easy schedule, and they got everybody coming back.
Yeah.
Right. And so I could see that. So I might say 5. Now when you get past those, it's kind of hard to tell, in some regard how it's going to turn out. So you can also see a path for several teams to be better than they were last season. South Carolina's in there.
Right.
Mississippi State could be better than last year, but how much? Vandy, could they be better? I don't know. Probably not.
Yeah.
Could Florida be better? Their schedule is incredibly difficult. Kentucky.
I talked about this a little bit earlier, and that's, we are obviously in the middle of talking season. We're all about making predictions and speculating off of what we know of the teams that we saw a season ago. And we've been, so used to that for so long because, again, college football's been going on for 150 some odd years. And for 98% of that time, the difference between one year and another with a team usually wasn't that great. Like, yeah, we had some teams that would make significant turnarounds, but for the most part, you were playing with the majority of the same guys that you had a year ago. In the past handful of years, though, with the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff, you can make significant shifts to your roster completely overnight. You can rebuild an entire team like Deion's done out there in Colorado each of the past 2 seasons, but we still, with those unknowns, are always going to go back to what we saw from these teams the season prior as kind of that baseline, saying, okay, well, I don't know if they can improve on that or they're going to get worse from yet. And that's kind of where Carolina falls in with a lot of people that, yes, they made a lot of changes in the offseason, improved in a lot of positions that we think are going to be significantly better this year, especially on defense. But everybody's always going to go back to the 5 and 7. They're going to go back to what they saw on the field last year until you give them something to prove otherwise.
Well, and we have actually seen, when you were saying that, it kind of came in my mind, well, when is the last time that South Carolina staged a pretty significant turnaround from one season to the other? And it was actually pretty recently.
Mm-hmm.
You think back to the 2020 season. Yes, it was shortened by COVID, but South Carolina went 2-8 that year. And that is a primary reason why when Shane Beamer came in for year one, the bar was so incredibly low. I mean, he referenced it at media days. I think it was the ceiling for the team was, 2 or 3 wins? I mean, that was one national writer, but you even go back and look at what Vegas thought of the team that year. They set the bar very low. That team goes out in 2021 and goes 7-6.
Mm-hmm.
So while that's not, a historical season, you did have a 5-win improvement. You did get to a bowl game. You had a significant turnaround in that year. There have been other instances too. I mean, South Carolina went 3-9 in 2015. That's the season where Steve Spurrier walked away in the middle of the year. The next season, they finished with a losing record, but they were 6-7. They made a bowl. The reason they were 6-7 is they lost in a bowl game. So there's precedent to have turnaround, certainly here at South Carolina, from 5-7, lower expectations to, having a pretty good year. I think the question is, will people be happy with your baseline is you've got to, make it back to a bowl.
Sure. Oh, bare minimum. Yes.
You need to go win. People want to win. I think people want to see a 7-win season at least. So the question is, A, can you get there? B, can you go beyond that? Can you go really surprise people? And even in the face of this very difficult schedule, can you go really make some noise? And, I think you're just looking at it now. We'll dive into this a lot more in detail every single week during the season, but it's going to be a low margin of error season. It is even frankly, for elite teams in this league. They have a low margin of error. It can go, it's a few plays here and there. For this team, that's certainly going to be the case. There's going to be a lot of swing games for them, and there's going to be some swing games early. A big one that comes to mind, not to skip past Old Dominion, who, Tyler, you said they're going to win by 60 the other day.
That'd be nice.
Go on record. But Kentucky, very early is going to be that litmus test, like this, you got to win this game.
We'll dive into what Greg McElroy had to say about South Carolina here in just a moment. I do want to, I came across this nugget from Saturday Down South. So Georgia, again, was predicted to win the SEC based on the media poll. Alabama was picked 3rd, so they're not even expected to go to the championship game. Texas in that number 2 spot. Do you know the last 4 years, Alabama was not picked to win the SEC in the media poll? You know what years those were?
No idea.
23, 15, 12, and 9. You know what Alabama did on 4 of those years? They won the SEC. So history might be on Kalen DeBoer's side in his first year at Alabama. We'll see.
They're being undervalued.
They're being undervalued. Can't wait for somebody to say Bama's going to go 7-5. There's your bulletin board material. Again, we'll dive into what Greg McElroy had to say in just a moment. I want to remind you, Ultimate Season Ticket Giveaway coming up next Monday, July the 29th. One winner will get season tickets to all South Carolina home football, baseball, women's, and men's basketball games for the entire sports calendar year. Listeners will register by going to 1075thegame.com starting next Monday. And just like last year, we're going to announce the 3 finalists that will all show up at the Summer Golf Tournament at Charwood Golf Club coming up in a couple weeks to see who takes the ultimate season ticket giveaway prize. This is all sponsored by the Men's Clinic at the Irmo Professional Center. Come back with more Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. McElroy's comments on the Gamecocks next here on The Game. Welcome back. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head and Chris Clark along with you on this Monday. Again, as we talked in the media poll there, South Carolina not being favored by too many people, 13th overall out of the 16 teams in the new SEC. You know, Coach Saban did have, some encouraging thoughts on what South Carolina could be this year when he was on the desk for SEC Network last week out at Media Days, and his former national championship winning quarterback, Greg McElroy, also of ESPN, as well as our sister station, Jocks FM out in Birmingham, also had some optimistic thoughts on what he thinks South Carolina can be this year. Let's hear what McElroy had to say about the Gamecocks.
The reality is a lot of people look at the South Carolina Gamecocks and they think about where they were problematic last year. The reality is they probably will be picked 14th, 15th, or 16th. Vanderbilt will probably be 16th. Then you probably have some combination of Arkansas, South Carolina, and Mississippi State. Like those four teams will probably be the teams that are ranked 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th. What I would say is that in visiting with people that are very familiar with what South Carolina has, I think they're going to be better than people realize. I think defensively, they have a chance to be really good. Now, really good is relative. I don't think they're going to be a top 2 or 3 defense in the league, but I think they'll be in the top half, which is going to probably allow them to win more games than people are anticipating. And if their offense develops into the offensive identity that I think they're going to develop into, ground and pound, run the football, use Lenoris Sellers, run him around and create with his legs, that's going to shrink the game and only improve their defense. So I think South Carolina is being slept on.
And that clip came out before the media poll was released, but he was right on with about where they were projected to be, which again is 13th there. And it's interesting the way he kind of breaks that down because, we have optimism that this defense is going to be better. We talked about the experience they have up front at linebacker. You're getting more, guys coming back, and Eamon and Kilgore and guys like that in your secondary that should be better with another year under their belt. And like you said, they don't have to be a top 3 defense in the SEC. If they can get top half, if you can be the top 8 in most of those major categories, you should have a defense that should put you in a better position to win more games this year.
It's an interesting situation because I think you are trying to project improvement in basically every phase of the game. Certainly offense and defense. Special teams would probably be third in that mix, but Shane Beamer has been on record that, hey, we went 5-7. We weren't good enough in any phase of the game. And certainly as big as special teams is here in Columbia and his program, as impactful as it was, especially in 2022, you can think about that, but in 2021 as well, that's a big part of it here. It needs to be a big part of their program identity and kind of a differentiator for them. It wasn't as much last year. But I think you do start probably more with offense and defense in terms of just being able to look at the situation and say, all right, these have got to improve. It's different from a team than the first one that came to mind was Iowa. Like Iowa last year, what was their problem? Offense. I mean, It was like a gift to us in terms of content because it was so bad.
They legitimately have one of the best defenses in college football, and they couldn't get 100 yards on offense to save their life. And
they're really good on special teams. It's even more remarkable that their defense was that good because their offense did nothing to complement their defense.
Right.
Like nothing.
Right.
And so if you look at Iowa and go, all right, like if they can just be decent on offense, like what could they have done or what could they do?
Sure.
With South Carolina, it's different because you're going, well, they've got to markedly improve on offense. They've got to markedly improve on defense, and they need to be better in special teams. And you've got to kind of project all those. But as you just said, Tyler, even last year where they did struggle at times or even consistently in all of those phases, there are some like silver linings. There's some evidence that they could be better. And the big reason is like defensively. If they had not played the month of November, if it was only what we saw the first half of the season, the first 7 games of the season, we'd be sitting here going, they got a bunch of seniors back and they got some transfers, but they just weren't very good.
They were talking about a new defensive coordinator as well.
We would be. But they played quite well in November.
Sure.
And they, shifted philosophies and strategies and schemes. And they have so many players back, and they have added some pieces through recruiting, whether it's the portal or an impactful guy like Dylan Stewart. Offensively, again, same thing. You're projecting the offense needing to get better, but you're also saying, hey, I think it will be better. But you're trying to do that when they're replacing the two best players from their offense, the first-round pick at wide receiver and Xavier Legette and Spencer Rattler. So you got to look at it and go, okay, why will they be better? I still think you can find a path. And some of it is personnel because they'll be able to do some different things with Sellers. You've completely flipped the running back room, which is probably the biggest struggle that they've had last season, certainly. So the point is there's some projection here. And I don't think people are comfortable with projections when you're trying to figure out, okay, who are going to be the best teams.
Yeah. Well, it's easier to make projections when you're only, I guess, trying to fix one area of your team or one specific part of your team, as opposed to, again, South Carolina really had to touch up a lot of areas, which, again, I think they did a great job in the portal of that. We got to see it all come to fruition in the offseason. But going back to what I said a little bit earlier, where we're still conditioned to think the old way of college football, that teams can't make that big of a jump from one year to the other, even though we've seen it on display many times in the transfer portal era. We're just naturally inclined to kind of think that way. We're not going to really believe it until we see it. And, you know, with, again, as many new faces, as many rooms that have completely shifted around, we don't know what we have. We don't know we have a wide receiver. We think running back is going to be pretty good. We think Sellers is going to be pretty good at quarterback. We just got to see it on display when the season finally gets here. And this is something that I brought up earlier in reference to what McElroy said there with the dynamic that Lenore Sellers brings to the quarterback position that is unlike anything that Spencer Rattler was doing. And Rattler was athletic, but his MO was not to run the ball. It was sit back in the pocket, let things develop, and, you know, throw it down the field and flush the pocket and run if he needed to. But Sellers is a true running type of quarterback. And I'll go back to our conversation with Dow Loggins back at, you know, Pro Day, and his excitement level for what this offense was going to be completely reshuffled with this type of quarterback. And, you know, going back and looking, he's never worked with this type of quarterback before. Not his time in the NFL. He's with Jay Cutler and Sam Darnold and guys like that. Rattler was obviously the type of quarterback he was. Like, he's never had this kind of quarterback to use. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll see.
Well, and yeah, so some projection there too, right? Because what you say is, all right, well, Dow Loggins was on staff at Arkansas, not as the quarterbacks coach or the OC,
sure,
but he was a position coach at Arkansas during the 2022 season when they had Rocket Sanders and they had KJ Jefferson, who is more similar to Lenore Sellers. You know, I think Sellers has probably a higher upside, especially as a thrower, to be perfectly honest. Look, I think one good thing this offseason is I think people are really taking the projections for what they are, and I don't mean just the projections about South Carolina as a program. I just mean the SEC projections, where they're going to finish. I think people aren't getting offended that they were picked 13th because they recognize all these things. And I think people recognize, fans recognize that if you go out in the first part of this schedule and get some wins, that's going to follow. I mean, is it completely inconceivable that South Carolina could be 4-0 in September?
It's not.
Not to me. No. Because that's just getting the 60-plus point win against Old Dominion that Tyler has predicted. You got to play Kentucky on the road. Again, that's the one that people in Lexington, Kentucky, and Lexington, South Carolina are circling that game. If you win that one, oh, man, the tone completely changes.
Sure.
And then you got LSU at home. And again, LSU probably better than most people were thinking. But is that a winnable game? I mean, probably so. And then you play Akron on September 21st. So if you can do that, you'll have earned your flowers for the first third of the season.
Oh, sure.
And I think people aren't really as worried about it.
Yeah, and you have the opportunity there. And, you know, let's say you come out of it 3-1. Let's say you beat Old Dominion, Kentucky, you know, Akron, and then lose to LSU. That's still a pretty good place to be sitting at that point in time. And then you go into that onslaught of Ole Miss, Alabama, and Oklahoma in the month of October, which, again, wins are going to be very hard to come by there. But in terms of what people will think about this team, and yes, you want to win all those games, obviously, those are also showcase type games as well. An opportunity on a national stage to grab people's attention. And yeah, maybe you go into Alabama, you don't win that game, but if you make it interesting, if you can put up a fight for 4 quarters, that perception starts to shift about your team. Now, yes, perception is not what wins and loses games necessarily, but again, these are opportunities for you to show what you're made of against some of the best teams in all of college football.
Yeah, I mean, that we're talking about that September slate and how you've got a chance to prove something, but you need to collect some wins that month too, right? Because your next 4 games are against Ole Miss, Alabama, Oklahoma. 2 of those are on the road, and then you welcome in Texas A&M to Williams-Brice.
Well, and the month of November, for as much as we know October's going to be tough, we don't know what November's going to be. We don't know what A&M's going to be. We assume Vanderbilt's probably going to be bad, and you should be able to beat them. Missouri, we think they're going to be pretty good. Wofford, that's kind of off to the side there. And then Clemson, we think they're going to be pretty good as well, but you don't really know. And you're going to have an entire 2 months of the season up to that point to figure out those teams between now and then. But where we sit right now, we can't definitively say one way or the other how good or bad those teams are going to be.
That's what's so fun about the college football season is there's going to be some teams out there nationally that we have high expectations for that are not as good, and there's going to be some teams that do not have high expectations that surprise. The hope here is that South Carolina is one of those teams on that side, that they don't have big expectations, but they turn out to be a very good team this season.
That's why we play the games. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. He's Chris Clark. I'm Tyler Head here on the game.
No doubt. I mean, playing those three teams is always a challenge for us, and it's a challenge that we really love to embrace. Like, we embrace that every single time we play them. So yeah, it's going to be I guess weird not playing them this year, but like I said, we've got other games that we've got to handle, other teams, and we're going to prepare just like we always do.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Chris Clark, along with you on your Monday. Luke Doty out at Media Days last Monday talking about this schedule, which we were diving into in that last segment there, which is going to be devoid of Georgia, Florida, or Tennessee for the first time since South Carolina joined the SEC 30 years ago. And I know that, officially South Carolina does not have an in-conference rival, but you would say those three teams were the closest thing to that just from the regular repetition of playing them. And obviously you've had some pretty compelling games with Tennessee the past couple of years. The Georgia game was always interesting where, you beat some Georgia teams that maybe you didn't have any business beating, and the Florida game's always interesting too. None of those teams are on the schedule and won't be until at earliest 2026. Looking at the schedule now, does that mean A&M is your biggest in-conference rival game that you have this year, technically speaking? What was the name of that trophy that this game is played for now? We talked about this last year, that I was not even aware.
Yep. That came to me as soon as Dave said it.
I was not even aware that was a thing.
No relation to John Bonham from Led Zeppelin.
I'm sure that's in a utility closet in College Station somewhere right now.
I refuse to say that that's a rivalry.
Because the SEC handed it to you, right? It's like, all right, which I always thought A&M and Missouri should have been rivals with each other because they both came from the Big 12. Make them play every single year. Why they don't do that, I don't know. Instead of going, hey, now Missouri, you hate Arkansas, and A&M, you hate South Carolina. Okay, go. That just didn't make sense to me.
Well, I'm very excited for Texas and Texas A&M to get to play in the future. This is just
that's
juicy.
That's going to be a barn burner.
I do think I will say that when some people are trying to force the Missouri-South Carolina quote-unquote rivalry at the beginning, I didn't really like it. But now it is kind of like Missouri, Eli Drinkwitz is kind of a villain.
It's coming along. I'll say that much.
It's coming along.
It is, and rivalries have to happen naturally.
Yes.
You can't just say, okay, now this is your rival. It doesn't work that way. There have to be seeds planted, and it has to develop over time. Sometimes it takes a decade, but I will say, and I don't know if Missouri views this the same way, but, when you have the very punchable face of Eli Drinkwitz that continues to get one over on you again and again and again, and seeing that program rise the way that it did last year, while Carolina was thought to be ahead of it going into last year, that just adds a little bit more fuel to the fire. And you're getting them coming in here this year, late November, where they could be in a very advantageous spot with their easy schedule to maybe make a run at the college football playoff. That might not be a game a lot of people are looking at nationally at that point in time, but that could be a sneaky, grinded out type of grudge match type of game.
How much would South Carolina love to play spoiler in that one?
Oh, 1,000%.
Talk about getting the monkey off your back type of thing, with just being able to break that painful streak that Missouri has and then be able to do it in a year where they have big expectations. I think the actual answer is still Kentucky.
Okay.
Neither – it's such a fascinating dynamic. Neither program – both programs think they're kind of stooping to the other's level.
Sure.
Kentucky thinks that they have certainly passed South Carolina. South Carolina thinks that they are certainly still past Kentucky. Both of them do not like each other. Yet it is a big measuring stick game for both programs. You just see what's kind of, what we think here about that Kentucky game. We just talked about it last segment, how big of a game it is to set the tone for the season. And they've said the same thing in Kentucky about the South Carolina game. So that to me, and you have some of the off-field stuff that's transpired, the sunglasses, blah, blah, blah. You've got all that stuff. So I think that's actually, since they have taken away some of those other classics from us in Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee, I think that's the answer for this year. Both schools, both Kentucky and South Carolina, would like to kind of leave the other in the rearview mirror. And we've talked about this for a while with South Carolina. before you go worry about, okay, let's try to, long term, right?
Sure.
If you're trying to, hey, let's go compete for the SEC, let's go chase Georgia, Alabama, Texas, all those schools. Well, now you got to add Texas in there and Oklahoma. First, you have to leave Missouri and Kentucky in the rear view, and that has not been done yet.
And for that, week 2 game in Lexington, I think whichever program loses, I don't want to say it's going to be hitting the panic button, but it's going to be like, whew, that's a game we probably should have had. And especially for 2 teams that are going to be saying, hey, we need to at least get to 6 wins and get to a bowl game. That's one of your wins that you feel like goes out the window if you don't pick up that win in week number 2.
Oh, absolutely. It just makes your path, a lot tougher. I mean, for Kentucky, like you look at their schedule, they play South Carolina and Kentucky. They're looking at that going, we need to get this one. After that, they've got their next 2 conference games are Georgia and Ole Miss.
Right. Not easy. That'll do it for today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. We'll jump into the halftime show. Myself and Terry Ford coming up next. Continue to revisit everything that happened at Media Days and get Terry's perspective on what it was like to be in Dallas and sleep in the Charlotte airport as well. That's coming up next here on The Game.